We are back with the album reviews, and I know that a lot of really standout, really prominent, and really big releases came out within the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to get to those, but I have to talk about this one first. I really do. So, you know what? Let's just dive into it. Endless Blue by Deadly Carnage. So Deadly Carnage is an Italian progressive death metal band. This is their fifth outfit after their 2018 release. This is the first album from them that I've heard of. And I think the best way to put it is like if PFM and Blanco or Banco are the Italian progressive band answers to a lot of like the 70s progressive rock stuff from the UK, this is the Italian response to a lot of the death metal, like the Swedish death metal stuff from the 2010s. When I first came to this band, hearing that their name is Deadly Carnage. I don't know why I keep doing that. And being recommended to me by a bunch of my really, really like death metal friends who love the dark, the dirge, the heavier the better, the more intense the better they enjoy it. And this was getting a lot of the thumbs up from them. I was like, all right, I'm in for a really aggressive time, a blow down the doors insanity, just intense aspect of it. And when I'm listening to it, I'm like, this is really not that, like the name Deadly Carnage is kind of a bait and switch. Yes, the album opens up with a really aggressive dirge that reminds me of Porcupine Tree's The Incident, with that dun, 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 like that really aggressive, very bombastic opening. But after the first like 20 to 30 seconds, we get into this very melodic, very soothing, very atmospheric side of things, and it opens up into much more of like a post-black metal aspect that's like very, again, atmospheric. It's full of harmonies, and it's opening up into something completely different. Like it sideswiped me super hard, and it made me fall in love with the rest of the album as a whole. I'm loving the more like almost Celtic vibes on here. Like the album, I'm getting very much ahead of myself, but the instrumental closer of Unknown Shores reminds me of something that like a Mostly Autumn or a progressive folk track would put out. We have this fiddle or fife kind of sound that we would get from like the Highlands, that permeates and really brings forth this brilliance and beauty that I couldn't believe that these guys are from Italy. I thought these guys would be from Cape Breton, of all places. One of the things that I love about this album is the ebbs and flows that it goes through. True, there's not like a really long, luscious, big, grandiose track with some, big climbs and climaxes and, massive sounds, but I love how tracks go from one to another. And the mid track of Mononoke, which I believe is a shout out to the Studio Ghibli film of the same name, when this track hits, it hits hard. Like even though I've been saying this album is very atmospheric, it's very overlaid with harmonies, when they hit, it hits pretty damn hard. Like the first minute of this track is just this dirge, this march to this final like continuation of it. And I love how the rhythm section really takes center stage, and it's this march. It's like this dun 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 that builds and builds and builds. And then when we get past that first minute, we have these haunting vocals that are stretching through, that kind of reaches through. And it reminds me of so many different scenes within Princess Mononoke, where it has that like very nature versus man and the machines, and how the two are in constant battle with one another, but in the end nature will always win, and I just love that power, that oomph about it. But I have gotten ahead of myself. I definitely have gotten ahead of myself. The first two tracks, Dying Sun and Sublime Connection, I love how these two tracks flow perfectly into one another to create about 10 minutes worth of music. You know, Dying Sun does a great job of opening up the album. We do have a little bit of like the double kick within the drumming. You know, it's got that aggression aspect of it, but the soaring vocal works. The vocals on this album are just so heavenly. I love these swelling, big sounds. You know, it sounds very majestic and angelic in that sense. And when we come from the transition from Dying Sun into Sublime Connection, I love how they use that momentum to usher us right into the two tracks. Like, it literally does not miss a beat. Like, if you don't watch where it goes from one track to another, you will miss it. You'll think it's one complete track. And once again, it's the carry through of the vocal works, the carry through of that aggressive drumming styles, the chugging of the guitars, but it's not just like that deep dirge of the guitars. There's a lot of like that atmosphere and the soundscapiness of it. And it just sounds so pleasant, you know, like so much of this is in the major chord that you're forgetting that this band is called Deadly Carnage, you know, like it sounds so pleasant. It sounds so optimistic and like positive in that case. I love the fact that they're able to kind of bring things down as well. Like the clue is pretty aggressive still. It's still pretty like immediate. I'm getting flavors of some more of the modern progressive rock bands. Like any fan of The Pain of Salvation will drool over this track. But the fourth track of Blue Womb really feels like some of the smaller tracks that we would get from an Opeth like Ghost Reservoirs or some of their earlier work as well, like within the Candlelit era, but more in the slower movements, and it allows the atmosphere of the track to really elevate the music as a whole. Now, if you want to talk about build-ups and payoffs, the sixth track, because I've already talked about Mononoke, of Swan Season, it reminds me of some of the sounds that we were getting from Drown With Me from Porcupine Tree, and the fact that these boys haven't found the amount of gushiness and the amount of fan base within the modern progressive rock style of things, it makes me scratch my head because, I mean, this song is better than anything that Steven Wilson has done within the past decade. You know, and it's got that same kind of like groove and rhythm section that Drown With Me has, but I love how it continuously builds itself up and it builds itself up, and by just past the mid-mark, we have this brilliant and beautiful crescendo where everything comes together as a whole that just makes the song so satisfying. I couldn't help but just gush at what I was hearing within that sense and within that framework. And I think the most aggressive track on the album is the second last tracks, Moans, Grief, and Wails. It reminds me of something that like a Death Heaven would do, but instead of having these like moments within the aggressiveness that are almost islands in unto themselves, they spread it out throughout. So it's kind of like a blending of it. You know, instead of oil and water, you're pouring food coloring into the mix and having a much more unifying feel within that. And I want to really shine the light on the harmonies on this, because the track ends with this 4-part harmonies just within the vocal works that makes me as a Moon Safari fan melt, you know? And when you're able to do that in a little bit more of an aggressive style, it really shows that these guys have the talent. You know, it has the things that I love about this style of music. And I've already talked about the Unknown Shores that brings the album together just perfectly. The last thing that I want to talk about within this album is how they're able to use different sounds to really bring about the themes of this music. You know, within a number of these tracks, you hear like the scratch on the guitar that sounds like whales music, you know, like whale songs. And I'm sure Gojira is kicking themselves that they didn't think about this first when they were doing Flying Whales. Just these little small attentions to detail that really elevate the music overall, made for one of the best music experiences that I've had all year. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this review, we've had standout releases from Baroness, Explosions in the Sky, and Tesseract, and this is the album that I've listened to more so than any of those other albums. This is the one that I keep coming back to because I can't get enough about this album. And this album is also the perfect length. It's 38 minutes, you know. It's a perfect punch of music. Like, it's getting back to those shorter, punchier, more polished and refined albums. And I'm not spending an hour and a half searching throughout an album trying to find the good nuggets. You know, these guys have refined the good nuggets into a perfect 38 minutes worth of music. And I just wish more and more bands would do that, because I don't want to be searching for an hour to try to find something good to say about an album. I want just that 38 perfect length of music. So kudos for Deadly Carnage for putting out a really stand up and really amazing album. This is one of my favorite albums of the year. I would be shocked if it's not within my at least top 10 of the year. And I've been having a ball with this one. So I will say at the end of this review, my final rating for this album is Endless Blue by Deadly Carnage is one that I absolutely love with my whole heart. You know, this is a run, don't walk. I highly, highly recommend checking this one out. If you're hesitant to more of the harsher expressions of music, this is a perfect inroad. You know, there's the aggressive tendencies here and there, but they are few and far between. Really, it's the harmonies, it's the atmosphere, it's the vocalizations that really is the star performer on here. And if you're a fan of this more aggressive style of music, you gotta check this one out. This is an absolutely run, don't walk to listen to it. It gets the note seal of approval, the 2 massive thumbs up. Go and listen to it. Stop what you're doing and go and listen to it. You know, put down the Tesseract, put down the Baroness, and go and listen to Deadly Carnage, because this one wins. That's all I'm going to say. So that's my thoughts on Deadly Carnage with their album of Endless Blue. What is your thoughts about this album? Let me know if you loved it, if you hated it. I guarantee you're going to find something you're going to like off of this album. But do that and let me know what you thought by commenting down below. And yeah, that's it for me. So thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.